Anyone who knows me will know that I'm just kidding. We already did that. Let's just jump into it. Now, the next game to talk about isn't actually in the Dark Pictures Anthology, but instead another game similar in style called The Casting of Frank Stone, which is a tie-in to the Dead by Daylight universe, another game in the horror genre. I'm talking about them in the order that I played them. Why did I slide this one in before the last installment of the series? I do not know. Anyway, it tries to flesh out more of the Dead by Daylight world and the powers at play within it. I, for one, am not the biggest DPD fan. I've played it on and off since release, so I am quite familiar with its mechanics, and I've done some digging into the lore of the game as well. But the topic around discussing the lore of the Dead by Daylight world is what got me hooked, pun intended, on the casting of Frank Stone to begin with. I think that the casting of Frank Stone was pretty okay. The intro was quite cool and definitely a lot more connected to the larger story, as it deals quite a bit with altered timelines and dimensions. It was also narratively engaging. Even if it was a bit quick, it was still poignant and genuinely frightening and rewarding to face off against the titular Frank Stone. It's really cute how many Dead by Daylight staples they incorporated as they did, specifically the generators and skill checks, which replaced the usual QTE buttons, some iconic sound effects, along with references and Easter eggs related to the game. All that being said, the game throws you right into the thick of it as Officer Sam Green, who is now investigating an old steel mill one night in 1963 in the small town of Cedar Hills. There have been quite a few disappearances lately, so as Sam continues to search the steel mill, he finds Frank Stone, an elusive and isolated worker who has been the main perpetrator of these disappearances and murders, and whose steel mill hideout Sam now finds himself in. They face off, and if you play your cards right, Frank is defeated, and the baby he was about to throw into a furnace saved. We then cut forward to the present in 2024, where a young woman, Maddie, is flying to England upon being invited to a mansion for a business deal. There she meets Linda and Bruno, Linda being an older film director and Bruno a young and suave, almost con artist businessman. They are invited to the mansion by Augustine Lieber, as she is trying to purchase the original roll of film for a movie titled Murder Mill, on which Linda worked on, and all three have a piece. From there, we jump back to Cedar Hills, this time in the 80s, where we meet a younger Linda and her two friends Jamie and Chris, who are in the process of shooting that very same film, Murder Mill. You can see what I mean by timelines. The entire plotline in 2024 was, to me, not as compelling as the one in the 80s. I didn't really get a sense of who Maddie and Stan were, besides Stan kind of being a more nefarious comedic relief character, and Maddie being more or less a blank slate, as opposed to the characters in the 80s, who were all much more unique and interesting. Chris being the bombastic, headstrong, and stubborn director, Jamie the more sensitive and empathetic lead actor, and Linda an introverted and detail-oriented cinematographer, along with some more cannon fodder characters such as Jamie's older sister, Bonnie, who is more rebellious and tough compared to her brother, and the now Sheriff Sam Green's son, Robert, who is also enthusiastic and well-meaning, and he just kind of wants to be a part of the team because he loves horror films. I honestly wish we had spent more time with the 80s group, as I wanted their stories to be more developed than they actually were, and also not only the physical but temporal proximity to Frank Stone and his crimes made it feel much more pressing. The story then jumps back and forth between the 80s and modern day as the kids in the 80s make the Murder Mill film at the actual mill that Frank Stone killed in, and the modern day group conducts their business with the mysterious Augustine. I feel like the story got a bit too big for its britches. At first, it's just a story about a group of friends who found themselves to have made a cursed film and the repercussions that came with that. And then it turns into this weird time travel multiverse plot where Augustine has been orchestrating everything in order to make contact with the entity, which is the main force of power in the Dead by Daylight universe. Augustine has been using her vast amounts of knowledge and money to groom not only Frank Stone into being a worthy offering to the entity, but also to set up multiple multiverse events in order to collect the spoils of her efforts to call the entity forward. The actual horror sections of the game take a long time to get into. They are more or less, excluding the prologue, limited to the last third of the game, where the modern-day group and the 80s group come into contact with two more supernatural forms of Frank Stone. The kids in the 80s face off against a fragmented, not fully materialized spectral version of the killer, while the modern-day group has to face a supernatural, reborn Frank Stone. Sadly, I don't think that Frank Stone was as cool as he could have been. It really boils down to not having enough time with the character, especially in his final form. The ghostly version of Frank was the least interesting in my opinion, as it seemed to be easily dealt with within the game. It never really seemed like much of a threat, as opposed to the more Jason Voorhees level unstoppable monster that Frank Stone becomes at the end of the story. And that version is only really a threat for the very last bit of the game itself. You see, as the kids film the movie in the mill, Augustine and the powers that be pseudo-resurrect Frank Stone in a ghostly form that is connected to the magical camera that the time-traveling Augustine lent the kids prior. He, of course, then starts wreaking havoc, which more or less boils down to some off-screen chases, walking towards you menacingly, and depending on what you do, killing some characters off. It all culminates in a less than thrilling finale, where they trap the ghost inside the roll of film, thus leading to it being cursed. In the 2024 plotline, the group finds an older Sheriff Green, along with a time-traveling Chris, at least in my playthrough, because she got sucked up by one of Augustine's time-traveling dimensional portals, and then learn of Augustine's true intentions, which is resurrecting Frank Stone in order to offer him up to the entity. Thus begins the very anticlimactic final of the game as a whole. Frank Stone is summoned, people die, and he chases you. Again, the now quite monstrous Frank Stone is a fun threat and villain, as he feels truly insurmountable to stop. He's just very underutilized. The game would rather spend time on discussing the multiverse plot elements and Augustine's collection of things from across time, and this Sheriff Green not being, the Sheriff Green from this iteration of Linda's past, Chris time traveling and etc., all that jazz. Augustine, sadly, after all that, doesn't get something from the entity, as it is an eldritch and uncontrollable creature of power, and she is slaughtered by her own creature, Frank Stone, as always seems to be the case in stories like these. It all ends with whoever stayed alive due to your decisions finding themselves around a campfire in the mysterious forest after the entity has been summoned. Those privy to the Dead by Daylight world will know that this is the entity's realm, and where the Dead by Daylight game is set. Here, in an endless loop, survivors are thrown up against a multitude of killers in trials meant to feed the entity. I didn't find this hit very hard at all. The other thing I wasn't a big fan of is I felt that most of my decisions didn't really have the same weight as they do in some of the other games. Perhaps it's just more subtle or hidden better, but to me it seemed like I didn't really make much of a difference in the story, besides perhaps some dialogue options. And on a similar note, just as subtle as the decisions, I didn't really see the character relationship bars coming into play as much. This all made it feel more like a visual novel and less like a video game. It had some interesting ideas and cool sequences, but overall I was a bit disappointed, and it was surely a downgrade from previous titles. Sorry, Frank. And finally, we come to the end. The Devil in Me is the fourth and final entry into Season 1 of the Dark Pictures Anthology. This time centered around a documentary film crew developing a show on the real American serial killer, Henry Howard Holmes. They then, of course, find themselves in quite a bit of danger after accepting an invitation to a tour, a reconstruction of Holmes's murder castle. What could go wrong with that? As opposed to the other entries in the series, The Devil in Me forgoes the standard style of introducing characters and instead shows you small, in-world video recording introductions of the main cast. It really lets the characters speak for themselves, literally, which quickly allows you to get to know them faster than any assortment of words ever could. So this format was just as good, if not even better, at quickly introducing and developing the characters. This is one of the many positive and interesting changes made to the up until now designated format of the series. Another unique change to the gameplay was the introduction of little character-specific gadgets. Each character had a set of items that could be used for different things, whether it be operating certain machines, or uncovering hidden messages, or reaching things out of reach, or picking locks. It just added another layer to every character and made them all stand out. They not only have their own personalities, but their own strengths as well. And if, God forbid, one of them meets a grisly end, their gadgets would then become inaccessible. And you may miss out on certain items or choices or pieces of information. That being said, the game, like the House of Ashes, wastes no time in getting into the horror of it all. Right off the bat, you enter the main location, and creepy things start to happen to you. While there is a prologue that doesn't set up much, mainly just using its duration to introduce you to the threats of the story, it is the quickest one yet and quite enjoyable and entertaining, taking you back in time to the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago, where and when the real Henry Howard Holmes was active. The honeymooners, Jeff and Marie, find their way into Holmes's very, very safe hotel, and then meet tragic ends at the hands of his Saw-esque traps. From there, we cut to modern day and are introduced to our main cast and film crew. Charlie, a middle-aged and washed-up director and producer who is striving to make a name for himself in the industry, even though things haven't really been working out for him so far.
Yeah, Charlie Lonitz, UK originally. I've been here for 20 years. The last series was so on track. It was a very beautifully conceived and didn't quite hit the mark as I was hoping it would.
Kate, played by Jessie Buckley, is an actor and lead presenter of the documentary.
And yeah, it's really tough when just being honest means everyone thinks you're a bitch. I'm not. Sure, I've got issues to deal with, same as everyone. I'm working on it.
She is a guarded person who has trouble opening up about herself, but she's also had a bit of a romantic fling with Mark, who's the team's cinematographer, and a very sensitive and capable guy. He likes to play things safe, including his relationship with Kate, which has recently hit a bit of a rocky patch.
Hey, I'm Mark. I study photography at UCLA. Had a great time. Really want to get back into some serious photography. But yeah, it's a job.
Jamie is the lighting technician and grip. She's more headstrong and almost blunt, a very hard worker.
See a problem, light it. You don't often meet someone like that. Man, how do you even start? I'm sick of being on my own.
But she does have a soft spot for Aaron, who is the sound designer and Charlie's assistant. Aaron is more timid and needs to find her voice, though she does seem to be the glue that helps keep the team together.
Sorry, do you start with qualifications or, like personnel info? Because will anyone access this? I'm kind of private, actually.
Much like in the House of Ashes, every character's opinion and relationship with one another felt incredibly pressing, perhaps the most it's ever been throughout the series. It really feels like a balancing act, since they all are already so at odds with each other to begin with, and now their already strained relationships are going to be put to the test during this horrific adventure they're about to embark on. That being said, every character this time around felt incredibly well-rounded and developed. Whether the writing or acting was extra good this time, I don't know. But the pieces fit perfectly, so no character was left behind. Everyone had interesting stuff going on, and it was really entertaining and made, at least me, look out for them perhaps more than I necessarily would have if they were boring. All the character development also felt very natural. People act and talk the way people act and talk, and random, seemingly minor events lead to doubts and thoughts that would boil over in a character's head and then pop out anywhere else down the line. So that was really cool. That being said, once the group finds themselves on the island where the reconstruction of the murder castle is built, they are separated from their phones and meet a very suspicious and skittish man, Mr. Dumet. You can probably see where this is going. But before we get into the scary stuff, Jamie and Aaron's relationship blossomed. Oh, how nice is that? And Mark and Kate are figuring out things too. And, Charlie as well, just being himself.
Breaking down walls, navigating the maze of anxiety. Are you fucking kidding me?
I think she thought it might help with your stress, or...
Absolutely not. I'm not stressed, okay? Oh, no, please, come on, no!
They're invited to dinner, and Dumet flakes on them. What a guy. And Jamie tells the group that she saw him and what they assume is his young daughter running and escaping on the ferry, leaving them stranded on the island. Charlie does not let this get them down, though, and after a rousing speech, he sends them off to start preparing for the first shot. Now it is here when shit hits the fan. Erin finds herself separated from the group in the confusing layout of the hotel and becomes trapped in a pitch black and dusty room, which is particularly distressing to Erin because she has asthma. While the rest of the group tries to find and rescue her, Erin finds herself face to face with the main antagonist of the game, who I'll just be calling Dumet because that's what they call him in the game. Anyway, he is an H.H. Holmes super fanboy. Like most masked killers in horror content, he loves to mess with his victims before disposing of them, whether it be frightening them, walking after them menacingly, putting them into elaborate traps, playing mind games, or posing their dead bodies, of which Dumet has a particular love for. He does it all. This is the first threat in any of these games that is seemingly just a guy. Nothing supernatural or alien, just a human being. And yet, he is still such an intimidating force throughout the game, as while he may not be entirely physically powerful, it's his intellect that makes him a danger. You are in his territory, of which you quickly come to understand is very elaborate and that he has full control over. The walls move, there are cameras, secret passages, traps. He could be anywhere, and he can see you anywhere. The group gets split up again, and fighting each other in Dumet's maze, and then they get split up once more. The mystery of this game focuses on the why instead of the what. In the other games in this series, it's always, what's going on, or what are these monsters? But in The Devil in Me, it's quite apparent what's going on. it's a serial killer. The question is, why is he doing this? And as the group explores his reconstruction and begins to uncover the answer, all while avoiding Dumet and his lethal traps, it becomes pretty apparent. In a very Silence of the Lambs type way, Dumet is seemingly an ex-FBI agent who, after so much profiling work and interviews with other serial killers, finally found his true calling, which is to kill. Obviously, we also find out that he had a very troubling childhood, as these killers always do, but I am a big fan of FBI mysteries like this, so I was quite entertained. Most of the game is traveling through the hotel or avoiding elaborate traps, and Dumet himself, with another added hide function, which made the traversal segments feel less safe than ever, and simply surviving as you try and find a way out. There was a lot of variety in the locations of the game, and every section felt like it had a reason to exist, which is never a given with video games. But I had a lot of fun with this one. It went by faster than some of the others, and it never really lost steam. It had very consistent entertainment levels, and I was more or less engaged from start to finish. Once your team escapes the hotel itself, after a little face-off with Dumet, which is another reason why the threat being just a guy is fun and different, is that while a lead pipe might not do much to a ghost or alien monster, it would fucking hurt just your average guy. So the group finds themselves, again, split up, but now on the greater area of the island. You traverse some fun sections through the woods, like a little hedge mage, and they all meet back up at the lighthouse on the island in order to attempt to signal for help. Here you finally uncover everything there is to know about Dumet, including his love for the film Psycho. Just kidding. But the climax is a chase down to the boat to escape the island. A cop comes and dies, as they often do in these types of stories, and everything seems fine as they escape the island. That is, until Dumet appears on the speeding boat because he was a stowaway. Like House of Ashes, there is one final stand against Dumet, and while it is less badass than Marines fighting alien monsters, it did feel good to work as a team and kick the shit out of this guy who's been tormenting you. It ends climactically, and everyone made it out. It wraps up nicely as storylines are finished and characters put aside their differences and reconnect and trauma bond. Overall, I had fun with this one. It was very unique compared to the others. 2 ghost stories and alien monsters and then just a normal guy, and all the things they added to the gameplay and format made it seem even more polished and engaging to play as well. I hope they continue with these changes and even improve them, as the next game in the Dark Pictures Anthology, after a short hiatus, has been announced and is on its way. So safe to say I am pretty excited. Anyway, that is all on this topic for now. Again, sorry for the incessant rambling. You know me. I love to talk. I love to hear myself talk. I don't know. But here is some more music and some more images. I'm recording this before I edit the video, so let's hope the images are funny. Or else this bit will not be funny. Anyway, thank you.